Jackson Systems is your controls expert in the HVAC industry. With our top-notch technical support and customer service, we make life easier for you, the HVAC contractor. We offer free trainings on any products sold here at Jackson Systems, along with our filter fetch program, free thermostat imprinting, home and business automation with connected sensors, cameras, and even smart stats from Nest, Ecobee, Honeywell, White Rogers, Google, and more. Visit us at jacksonsystems.com to see the products that continue to win industry acclaim among contractors worldwide. Jackson Systems, controls done right.
It's the funny thing about life and living. No matter what you think is going to happen, no matter what you think is going to occur 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you never really know. You never know what's going to happen. I've found that there's some events in your life that stand out. Wedding day, birth of your children, the day someone you love passes away, and sometimes it's something else. 2013, my wife got sick. That day I will always remember. It was a horrible, horrible day, but I remember very vividly. I can remember what people said. I can remember snapshots in time of what was going on. It's the way with a lot of people. And those events, either negative or positive, change your life forever. Sometimes a positive event can change your life in a negative way, and vice versa. A negative event can change your life in a positive way. I like to think, and I tell myself, that any event that occurs in your life is put there by God to point you in a certain direction. It's a comforting way to think. Now, if I believed there was no God, everything was just random, I don't know, I think I'd be terrified. I like the fact there's someone looking out for me, and someone pointing me in the right direction. That's how I feel. When my wife got sick, she's still sick to this day in some capacities. But it changed our lives in a way that we can't go back from. And that's okay, because we've adapted, and in some ways we're much better off now than we were before. I used to work like a lot of you work, till the middle of the night, fixing ACs in the summertime. And slowly over the last few years, I've gotten away from that. I don't work quite as much in the field any longer. I take care of her, I take care of the kids, and I've gone into this life of podcasting. I've received some ridicule for that. And myself, I've often wondered, is this the right move? Because when you go from a hands-on, dirty hand, labor-intensive job to something like this, it's culture shock. You've got to learn to respect a new way of life, and that's what I'm going to do. But those days come along, your life has changed, and you either adapt, make something out of it, or you get eaten up. And I chose to not get eaten up. My name is Zack, and this is The Tradesman. Welcome back to episode 8 of The Tradesman, and we have a great show for you today. The interview you're about to listen to is probably my favorite one so far, because it hits so close to home. In the intro, I told a little bit about my background, some of my family stuff that's gone on over the last several years, and I've described how it shaped me into the person I am today, my intentions, my ambitions. Jim Bergmann has a very similar story for you today. He grew up in a household that had issues as well. He's going to tell the story of how his mother's illness affected him, shaped him into the person he is today, and affected their family life. It's a very interesting story, and you're going to learn some things about Jim Bergmann that you never knew. There won't be much HVAC in this interview. You won't hear psychometric charts. You won't hear measure quick, except for once or twice, because Jim can't help it. I think he has to say it once or twice. It's just built into his DNA. But it's an interesting story, something that I'll probably listen to a few times myself, because it was so captivating. So let's listen to Jim Bergmann tell the story of his childhood and the events that produced the man he is today.
I started riding with my dad in the truck probably when I was about maybe 3 or 4 years old. We lived in Brunswick, Ohio, and I remember my dad bringing me home an old purge compressor off a centrifugal chiller. And it was like this little half-ton, three-quarter-ton purge. He cleaned it all up with some Virginia 10. I remember all those smells when I was a kid, Virginia 10 and WD-40. Cleaned it all up for me, and I could take the cylinder head off of it and put it back on. I was like the only kid in the neighborhood that my erector set was actually a refrigeration compressor. And I remember just, tearing this thing apart in the garage. But my dad was always somebody that sort of pushed me towards mechanical things. He was a mechanic, but I really started learning a lot of necessity than anything because I think I was either 6 or 7 years old. I was sitting in her lap. We were sitting in the family room. It was 1976. We just moved in from Brunswick into Richfield. I was sitting in my mom's lap, and all of a sudden she just started flailing, and she had a grandma seizure. Later found out she had epilepsy, but I remember the ambulance coming, and all of a sudden the next day we're on an airplane, and I'm getting shipped to my aunt's in Chicago for, I don't know how long it was, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. And we found out my mom had epilepsy, and then we came back home. I'm like 6, 7 years old. We didn't really understand what was going on at the time there, but pretty much everything in my entire life changed at that point. Things happen for a reason, so I don't think it was a bad thing. It was just a whole new set of challenges, because back then they didn't know how to treat epilepsy. And in fact, if they had known she had had epilepsy before she was married, she would have gotten sterilized. They would have made her get sterilized to get married, because they would not allow people that have epilepsy to get married and have children, because they didn't want that genetically to get passed from one child to another, because they didn't understand it at the time. It's pretty crazy when I think back on the whole thing. But from that point on, with my mom being sick, my dad would take me pretty much wherever he was going. Finances became extremely tight. I remember when I was a kid, my parents being down to the last $35 and tell my dad, well, you guys can have what's in my savings account. I don't need it. I'm like 8, 9 years old, and I have maybe $10 in my account and whatever we could do to help out. But because of all this, my dad, he worked for a commercial outfit. He worked for Train. He did like 70 to 700 tons. He started doing a lot of side work because we needed money. There was just no way around it. We needed more money to survive. The Cleveland Clinic was extremely expensive. What mom had, they didn't know how to treat it at that time. She couldn't contribute to the household income, and dad had 2 kids, so it was a necessity. So I actually started riding with him almost everywhere we went on weekends and Saturdays and evenings, and we go out and do heating and air conditioning work. That was how I sort of got into this and sort of grew up really quickly working with my dad. We'd go everywhere. We took care of refrigeration at the Girl Scout camps. We took care of refrigeration in town. I remember for an entire year, it seems like I ate at Dairy Queen probably 3 or 4 nights a week because Dad didn't cook and Mom couldn't cook. We ate out a lot. Well, then Dad would go out. We'd go to Richfield Family Restaurant. There's a couple of restaurants in town, and he'd find out something was broke and the kitchen refrigeration was broke or whatever. He'd fix the refrigerator for the guy in exchange for just putting the tab on. So everywhere in town, we had a tab. We had a tab at the pharmacy. We had an old-time pharmacy that had a soda fountain. We did refrigeration work there. Dad never charged him. We had a tab. So we want to go in. Mom needed whatever, medicine, drugs, whatever, for epilepsy. Dad got him at a pretty big reduced rate. We went to the Richfield Family Restaurant. We ate dinner. We just got up, left the tip, and walked out the door. We didn't pay a bill because we did it with refrigeration. He did a lot of stuff like that, but because of that, we were always busy. I always told Dad he should have called his company SS&E, Saturdays, Sundays, and evenings, because that was pretty much was our life growing up in this.
How many hours did your dad work per week, counting all this extra activity?
I'd say he probably worked an extra 20, 25 hours a week outside of work doing side work. We worked every Saturday, every Sunday. We went to church. When I was a kid, we used to go to church all the time. And after Mom got sick, we quit going to church, and not because for any reason except Dad needed to make more money. So we spent Sundays a lot of times we could bang out a furnace and air conditioner and stuff over a weekend a lot of times. So that's what we ended up doing. We go to the wholesale house on Saturday mornings. I grew up in a supply house. I drive down to the supply house on Saturday, pick up the furnace, pick up the air conditioner, the ductwork, whatever. We do an installation on Saturday, and then we come back, finish it up on Sunday. That was a lot of our Saturdays and Sundays back then. So those were a lot of times 10, 12-hour days just on their own. It might have even been north of 20 hours, maybe additional 30, 40 hours a week. Who the heck knows? We did this from the time I was maybe 8 years old till Probably I was 22. My dad and I worked a lot together doing side business. We ran a business called Bergmann Enterprises. Both of us did commercial industrial work. So I actually got my contractor's license, I think when I was 20. I ended up getting my contractor's license for the state of Ohio, and we started doing things above board at that point. 70s, 80s, we go out and do side work. Was just my dad negotiating a deal or somebody paying us cash to do a side job. Then when we got a little more formalized and started our own business, then we figured out that doing a cash business wasn't the best thing to do. And times were changing too. We had to get things above board, and we started doing it that way. I think I was probably 15. I was a sophomore in high school. The vocational school came out, and they had a heating and air conditioning program. Told my dad I'd go back. I want to go to heating and air conditioning. He's like, no, you're going to college. I'm like, Dad, I really want to do heating and air conditioning. I can use it as a way to pay my way through college, because obviously we didn't have a college fund. He did not want me to go into heating and air conditioning. He's like, no, I busted my ass for your entire childhood. I don't want you having to do what I had to do. And a buddy of his, Mike Scott, he was talking to my dad, was like, yeah, my kid wants to go do this, and I don't want him to do it. And Mike's like, Jim, goes, my dad was Jim too. He goes, Jim, what the hell have you ever wanted for? What have your kids ever wanted for? He goes, has this business ever let you down? Have you not made a good living doing this? And he goes, no, I've made a real good living doing this. And he goes, have you ever been without work? He's like, no, I've never been without work. He goes, what the heck's the problem? Let the kid go to school and learn heating and air conditioning. He goes, he can go to college if he wants to go to college too, but he doesn't have to. Let him learn a trade. My dad relented and let me go into Cuyahoga Valley Career Center. Did really well in school with that, and then that's how it really got started and really got rolling.
Now, you mentioned that you had a brother or sister. Is that right?
I've got a sister. What a lot of people don't know about me was I was also a musician. My mom, when she got sick, she was home a lot, and she needed something to get her motor skills back and start to get her brain functioning. And epilepsy is almost like a stroke, but it messed with your brain, and things she had to take for this because, again, they didn't know how to treat it. There's some pretty heavy-duty stuff. She went to a place called Hale Farm and Village. It was like an old-time village, and they had dulcimer days there. A lap dulcimer is like an Appalachian mountain instrument. It's a teardrop-shaped plate in your lap. It's 4 strings. She saw this thing, and she wanted it, so my dad bought her one. She started to learn to play it. Well, then she started going back and forth to the music store, and she bought me a harmonica, and I started to learn to play the harmonica. And then she learned about a hammer dulcimer, and she bought one for my dad. Well, my dad didn't really want to learn to play this thing, so my sisters though started playing it, and then she became really good at hammer dulcimer. We actually formed a family band called Strings and Things. We started a jam session in downtown Richfield. When we weren't doing heating and air conditioning, I'd go into the jam sessions on Friday, and we had, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 people that showed up that played music, and it was all old-time string music, so pre-bluegrass type music. I played harmonica, I played stickman, which is like a rhythm instrument with a little guy on the end of a stick that you slap the board and his feet would dance on there. And my sister played hammer dulcimer, my mom played the dulcimer, and then she also picked up banjo, ukulele, and she learned to play the auto harp, a bunch of different instruments. By the time I was, I want to say 13, we had cut 2 records. We were playing all over the country, on and off. By the time I was 14 and discovered girls and electronics, that I could make more money doing heating and air conditioning, I sort of hung the band thing up and haven't really picked up music again. I really know my wife because I can pick up an instrument and start playing it. I just find more enjoyment in psychometric charts than I do in playing harmonica anymore. So,
I can only imagine you guys playing Cumberland Gap outside the town square down there or something. That's something I would never have pictured you doing. And that's very interesting to me. I play music as well. I'm a guitar player. I play piano and instruments such as that. And a lot of times I use the music to deal with some of the situations like you've described. You coming up with your mother, me with my wife. I use music to sort of blow off some steam. Is there any part of that in your youth that y'all used for that, or was it just we're going to have fun?
I think it was more having fun, and also it was a way for my mom to make some money. We cut a couple records. She sold the records. I think, honest to God, I think the records were really just to break even. I don't think we ever made money selling records because it cost so much to make a record back then. And we made records and we made CDs. My mom made a few bucks making records. We did a lot of gigs. We do a lot of weddings. We did a lot of festivals, music festivals, things like that. So A little bit later, like when I was 7, 8 years old, I was riding with my dad. We probably had gigs once a month. We'd drive somewhere and play music. For me, it wasn't really about blowing off steam. It was just something we did as a family. Believe it or not, we didn't have enough money back then. TV burned out. My dad just didn't have enough money for a TV, so we just didn't have one. We went to the library every Monday. I got 4 or 5 books out. Christmas for me was like 151 electronics kit, so I worked in the wood shop in the basement. My dad had a wood shop down there. He started actually building dulcimers as a hobby. I worked in the wood shop, 151 electronics kit. We didn't have a TV. Growing up in our household, it was work, music, reading. We lived backed up to the national park, so we spent a ton of time too in the woods. Slingshots and slings and all kinds of things, and then I did a lot of hunting too when I was growing up. Just a whole different lifestyle. 8 on, I was doing HVAC work with him almost on a weekly basis, so. To blow off steam is going squirrel hunting, just sitting in the woods and being in the quiet. Even if I wasn't hunting squirrels, it was just about having time to get away and think.
We used to do that when I was a kid as well. Not just squirrel hunting, but duck hunting was real big, and dove hunting was at the top of the list for some reason. Higher than anything else. Opening day of dove season was a magical day. My father, my brother, everybody would go out there. My father would lecture us about an hour and a half about gun safety. Every day when he came back from the hunt, he would take all the guns that were used, take them apart, clean them all. And that was his way of either getting away from everything or blowing off steam. But let's talk about your father, because your father, I sort of understand what he was thinking back then. How did he blow off steam? Because he's working, he's building dulcimers in his spare time. How does he just get a release from this whole thing?
Yeah, we'd go hunting or something once a month. I mean, that was one way. A lot of times he didn't blow off steam. He was somewhat angry at the world sometimes. He'd bottle all that emotion up. I remember my dad was a smoker. I mean, that's one way he blew off a little steam. He'd have to stop and have a cigarette all the time. It seemed to like keep him calmed down a little bit, but he'd get angry. He'd get angry at the world, frustrated. I honestly think that when my mom passed away, she was 61. She took a nap on the couch. Never woke up. She just literally, she got her makeup on. She's like, they're going to get ready to go to Sam's Club. She laid down. She says, told my dad, oh, I'm going to take a nap for a minute. Just lay down for a minute. And she never woke up from it. And I remember my dad, he just had almost like a nervous breakdown. He never was the same again after she died. And I think it's because my dad was a very devoted person. As devoted to his work and heating, air conditioning as he was to that, he was probably 10 times more devoted to that to family. He was always making sure that we had what we needed for school. Mom had what she needed. Everybody had what they needed. So he was an extremely devoted person, but it was a huge amount of stress on him. All of a sudden changed when Mom passed away. It was like a huge burden came off of him, but all of a sudden he lost his identity too. It changed him. It changed our whole family dynamic. I mean, that's a big part of the reason Dad and I quit working together. We had started TruTech Tools after my mom passed away. He had a change of priorities maybe in life too. He had all of a sudden realized he had worked his entire life and he had busted his ass, and all of a sudden he was like, he just wanted to stop. And he just wanted to do something different and focus on himself. 5 or 6 years after my mom passed away, got remarried, and he just wanted to focus on himself. So for me, you got to realize, I grew up my whole life working with my dad. Lives have been focused around work. This has been our identity. All of a sudden, boom, now Mom's gone, now Dad's gone for me. I just had to not take it personally because all of a sudden, my whole life's upside down because my dad's gone now. It's almost like he died. TruTech busting at the seams. At that point, we're doing over a couple $1 million a year in business, and all of a sudden, Dad's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get out and retire. Boom. As quickly as my life began in HVAC, like I'm immersed in it as a young kid, all of a sudden, Dad's gone out of the business. So that was a challenging time for me. I never worked for TruTech Tools. I was the face of it, but I didn't run the day-to-day business of it because when my dad wanted out, I called Bill Spohn, who was my boss at the time at Testo. And I'm like, hey, Dad wants to sell his stock in TruTech. He wants out. I don't know what the heck to do because I know this is a huge amount of business for Testo. I need somebody to run it. Do you know anybody that's interested in maybe buying it and going into business with me? And Bill's like, yeah, me. So he ended up buying my dad out. He quit Testo. I stayed working for Testo, and Bill took over my dad's position at TruTech and started running TruTech full time. At that time, I'm in my 40s. I'm ready to keep plugging away. I'm like at that prime earning time in my life, late 30s, early 40s, and all of a sudden Dad had a whole change of life event, and he wanted to change, and boom, it was over. And from that point on, it was sort of a strange relationship because his whole priorities, everything for him realigned. And a lot of it's just, like I said, all those years of having my mom sick, all those years of doing everything for everybody. And all of a sudden he just, for whatever reason, in his mind decided he wasn't going to do that anymore. He wanted to do something for himself. So that's what he did.
I could sort of understand that, going through life, working really hard, having all this stuff to deal with, and you get to a point, you look back on it, and all of a sudden, like you said, the burden of it is gone, and you realize that you really haven't enjoyed a lot of the parts of the world and of life that you could have because you're so focused on something else. It'd be a confusing time period.
My dad really, he liked HVAC work. Don't get me wrong. He really liked what he did. He was like the guy at the office that knew what the heck he was doing. He was very sharp. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But my dad did this for a living. I do this for a hobby. I love it. I love this stuff. I like the science. For my dad, it was a means to make a living. It was a means to earn a good wage. It was a means to help support our family. But where Dad and I were different is I got sucked into the science. I got sucked into the engineering behind this. And I took it to a whole new level beyond where my father was ever thinking. I always joke around, I really don't work for a living. I get to come in and play every day. I just happen to be lucky enough to get paid for it. I don't look at this as work. I think that's probably was the biggest frustration for me when things fell apart with my dad. It's like, I love this industry as a hobby. For him, it was work. So he and I had a different perspective in life at that point. You know, I was like super excited. I'm learning stuff all the time. I'm learning things, you know, the science, the technology behind what we do, taking it to the next level, digital instrumentation, all the stuff with Testo at the time, learning about combustion, learning about airflow, learning about refrigeration. My dad's at the end of his career where he's just trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to get through the next 5 years? And I'm looking, how can I take this to the next level type thing? You know, I have a whole different passion for it than he did. He very much appreciated the passion I had for it, and he was very excited for what we were doing. For him, it was, okay, it's work. It's always been work. Now it's time for me to quit work and do what I want to do. So,
just easy to turn off because
yeah, it was
so detached from it.
Yeah, I can't shut it off. I mean, I'm dreaming about this stuff at night. Some people dream about Ferrari. Some people dream about mountain biking. Some people dream about traveling the world. I dream about connected tools and connecting people and making people's jobs better and improving our industry. I've always been a bit of a visionary when it comes to seeing the big problems we have in our industry and kind of come up with solutions to solve those. MeasureQuick for me is like a dream almost, because I see a lot of manufacturers have great solutions, but they don't have complete solutions. And I'm trying to pull all this stuff together and make one giant complete solution through MeasureQuick right now. And so for me, it's like, you know, getting an opportunity to talk to Testo, to Sporlan, to Fieldpiece, to, you know, and I can't, you know, say all these guys are ever going to go to work with us, but the opportunity is we're making something the industry needs. So for me, it's much more than a job. It's passion for me. Everybody's got different reasons. I think that's what makes these forums so interesting. You know, think about my dad was growing up, we didn't have Facebook. They had RSES meetings. So the guys that were real passionate about it, they actually showed up at an RSES meeting and they all started talking about what they do for a living and what they're doing. My dad wouldn't have been the guy to go to the RSES meeting probably. He would have been the guy that would have gone, worked, done his job, been really good at what he did, but he didn't want to do it outside of work. We're already working 80 hours a week. You know, he didn't want to do this. But you get guys like us out that are passionate about this. It's sort of funny. I get home from work at 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I go eat dinner. Then I sit down and I'll peruse Facebook, see what people are talking about there, or listen to a podcast, or do a podcast, or you know, read about what's going on in the HVAC news, or pick up a book from the 1920s and on psychometrics, start to understand the core of what we do and understand that kind of stuff. I get to go home and just do what I enjoy doing. So it's, I don't know, it's just not work. For Dad, it was something different. But it's always provided me a good livelihood. Been the way my family's made money as long as I can remember.
And this will be our final question of the day, because I want to get your thoughts on this. Traveling back in time to your childhood, do you think if your mother never got sick, you'd be in the same spot you are today?
What I liked about HVAC work was I didn't have a boss over my shoulder. It was like the solidarity of it. I could go out, be in the zone, be putting together ductwork, be doing wiring, figuring out controls. Nobody's bothering me. I'm doing what I want to do. I've always been creative and artistic. For me, it was like a creative outlet and also an artistic outlet, because I mean, if you were to come out and look at jobs I did back in the day, I was the kind of guy that had the OCD wiring where everything was perfectly straight, Wires were all run parallel to each other. Everything was wire tied down. Every termination was perfect. I like things tight. I like things, the lines being parallel. That's just the way I like to do. I don't know that I found that anywhere else, but that's really what bit me with this business, was being able to do that. And so my dad dragging me along was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Number one, I wasn't dwelling on what was going on at home. I wasn't dwelling on my mom being sick. I was contributing to my family at that point. Taking your kid to work and actually having your kid contribute to your family is absolutely critical, because I learned going out and helping my dad, we were able to get some money to eat, get some money to go out and do something on the weekends, get some money to go out and go hunting or whatever we wanted to do. Because I went out and helped him. He made money. I was able to do some things. I don't think a lot of kids have perspective on where money comes from today. I'll still drag my kids to work. JD, my son, works at TruTech Tools. He worked in shipping, and I drag him into work. My daughter, Hannah, when she's off in the summer, she's worked for me at Stride Tools. She worked for me at North Park, and she'll probably come here and work with us at Manifold Cloud Services. I think it's really important for your kids to realize that the money that we earn doesn't just come out of the checking account. It actually comes from actually doing something that's productive. I don't know what I would have done if Dad would have got here, but I don't think I would have had the drive, the ambition, the creativity, the persistence. It's the other thing when you're doing this type of work. With this type of business, I think a lot of people don't realize is that everybody has problems, and you got to solve your problems. Back in the day, I used to be able to call my dad and just pick up the phone. If I had a problem at work or problem job I was looking at, I'd be able to call him for advice and that kind of stuff. And there's not many people I can call, bounce ideas off of. I got in a point in my career where it's a little more challenging to have people that I can talk to about ideas and do things. When you look at our jobs, it almost prepares us for this. When you're a heating and air conditioning technician, you're out on your own. You got to figure stuff out. Sometimes there's nobody you can call. And so now that I'm at this point in my career, it's sort of like being a top guy to your company. Who do you call when you need help? You're near that lead technician. You just got to figure it out. And I guess that's where I'm at in my career right now at Manifold Cloud Services. From a technical standpoint, I'm the guy. If I get stuck on something, I got to sit down and just be persistent and figure it out. I think that's a big part of what HVAC prepared me for, was that somebody's got no heat, somebody's got no cooling, something's not working, there's nobody to call. You just got to keep working on it till you get it figured out. I don't think a lot of people have that life skill along the way. They quit. I'll never figure it out, or they'll throw this thing aside. And it's like, when you got a customer on the other end and you've got to get it fixed, it changes your perspective on things. That's the other thing, is just tenacity. When I get on these problems, I work on them and work on them and work on them until I get figured out. And I've had problems like the airflow calculations we did for iManifold and iConnect. That's a problem I worked on for over a year straight, just thinking about it every single day. There's got to be a way to do it. There's got to be a way to do it. Working and working and working. And math is not my strong suit. I can understand the relationships. I'm about algebra 2. I went through calculus 3, but I don't remember any of that stuff anymore. So sit down and work through that stuff was tough. If I hadn't gotten into heating and air conditioning, if Dad hadn't drugged me along on there, I don't know that I'd be the same person today. That's a skill set it gave me. My daughter's in college right now, and she's calls me and she's complaining about how hard college is. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Just suck it up. Get to work. Do it. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. She started school with 100 people, and out of her class, there's 17 of them left after a year and a half of college. That's the way things are. And that's part of the beauty of, I think, growing up fast, growing up in heating and air conditioning, growing up watching my dad try and solve these kind of problems, and, us working late hours or whatever, trying to get stuff fixed, gave me a skill set that not everybody gets. I think it's something that a lot of us don't appreciate well enough. Like I said, there's those of us that eat, live, and breathe this stuff. And that's all of us sick bastards that sit on Facebook every single night talking about HVAC after we get home from doing it all day. And then there's the rest of the normal guys out there that just do this as a living. They don't get us. Sometimes we don't get them. Interesting if you sort of step out for a minute and you think about the types of people that do this. We always call these guys hacks. Well, they aren't hacks. It's just, sometimes it's just, they don't have any passion for what they're doing. It's a job. It's just a job. That's all they want to do. So for those of us that have the sickness of doing this around the clock, and maybe that's part of the sickness too, is when you say, do you have a release? It's like, well, maybe this was my release from my mom being sick in a way I didn't have to focus on it. I didn't have to focus on the illness, because she was literally in the hospital from the time I was 8 till I was 18. She was in the hospital once a year for something. Always worrying about mom going to die, when she's going in the hospital again, not knowing what was going to happen. maybe this is part of the reason I'm so passionate about this, is because this is my outlet. And I just haven't realized it yet. But I might just be a sick person that just likes heating and air conditioning too. So
You could be one of those sick bastards on Facebook that you were referring to, and I agree with you. Facebook is full of sick bastards. That's absolutely true. And I think you're right. I do the same thing with my wife. Either become ultra-focused or it eats you alive. So I choose to become ultra-focused instead. So that keeps me going. That keeps me focused on podcasting, HVAC, furthering myself, helping the family out, instead of just being overcome by it. Because it can be like a dark shroud if you let it.
I'm not sure the verse in the Bible, but it goes back to worrying's never going to add any time to your life, more or less, to be paraphrased. If you worry about things, you're not going to extend your life. You got to trust that God's going to take care of you along the way. If you dwell on that stuff, it'll eat you alive. And I think you're exactly right. Big part of growing up, this was a way of not dwelling on it. And I guess I just got sucked into it along the way and started to enjoy it.
Perhaps it worked out in the end. Talk about you, myself, even Brent last week. I interviewed Brent. It's the same story with him and his daughter. It makes you ultra-focused. Either it beats you or you win. And we've chosen to win instead, which I think works out in the end.
If I could go back and change my life, I don't think there's anything I would change. It's all happened for a reason. I believe I'm in the right place at the right time, doing what I should be doing. No regrets, no desire to change anything.
For over 60 years, Southwire has provided high-quality electrical wire and cable to the commercial and industrial construction industries. Now, the name you trust provides durable, cutting-edge, professional-grade tools designed with safety and productivity in mind. Southwire's tools are backed with a no-hassle lifetime warranty.
Meet Zoomlock, the 10-second flame-free refrigerant fitting from Parker. Reduce labor costs by 60% with no brazing, no flame, and no fire spotter. Discover how Zoomlock can help you be more efficient and productive. Visit Zoomlock.com for more information.
I would like to thank Jim Bergmann for coming on the show today. He didn't have to come on and talk about all this stuff. Usually when Jim comes on one of our podcasts, he talks HVAC, psychometrics, things like that. He doesn't usually spend time delving into his childhood, explaining his family life, and I'm glad he did, because I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I know a lot of you did too. If you like the podcast, please share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, retweet. I'm not even quite sure how that works, but if you could retweet it, that'd be fantastic. I really enjoyed this, guys. I'm glad you stopped by to listen to it. Don't forget we have a Facebook page, Tradesman. You can find that, like that Facebook page. You'll get updates there. Also, subscribe to WJR Pro on YouTube, and you can see our podcast there as well. If you want to make a comment, YouTube is a great place for that. Otherwise, I have the best way to listen to this podcast. You want to download it. Use podcast apps like Podcast Addict and Stitcher for Android. Also, you can use the podcast app for iPhone, and that is the best way to do it. So you can take it to work, you can listen to it in the car, or like me, you have an old tape deck in your car. I wish I wasn't serious, but I am. And you could use the cassette adapter to play them on the car speakers. And I'm dead serious. And it sounds fantastic, so don't hate. It's great. Guys, I look forward to seeing you on episode 9. Take care. Have a safe week. I'll see you on the next one. And now a very special word about the Blue Collar Network from Mr. Liam Neeson. The Blue Collar Network is a conglomeration. Excellent podcast. HVAC, building performance, and even fishing. That's right, fishing. If you don't like these podcasts, I will hunt you down. I will find you. And I will kill you. That's a joke, guys, so don't send an email, please.